What's up, people? I am. Oh, wow. Every time. Anyway, what's up, people? I am back. We are here to continue the Blade franchise. We're doing Blade Trinity, and man, this movie. I have a lot to say. This movie, like, I think there's decent scenes in it. I don't like. There are people like who despise this. I think I just because there's worse movies out there. It is bad, but it definitely isn't like the worst movie ever. But damn, especially when you learn like what the original script was gonna be. Like it was gonna be about like the post-apocalyptic world, like where vampires took over. Like I don't know why they didn't go that direction, but they didn't. Like and this movie's infamous for a lot of the behind the scenes drama. Like Wesley didn't like where they were going with it. You know, infamously, like he didn't like. There's like a lot of scenes he didn't even do. A lot of scenes were just a stunt man that. And this was direct. It's sad because David Goyer, you know, he's directed some stuff I like. You know, Nolan trilogy. He wrote a lot of I think he wrote the second Blade. I don't know if he did the first one, but and then he wrote like Man of Steel. But it's like, bro, what did you? Not every writer should be a director. Like I said this yesterday, not every writer should be a director. But the other problem with this movie is, yeah, Blade's not the focus. They were clearly they were trying to set up some Night Stalker show, and that's why. But I will say this: the good thing that came out of this movie was Ryan Reynolds was cast as Deadpool because of it. So we got that. But yeah, the movie was pretty bad. The Dracula was probably the worst thing they did. Like Dracula was not done well. So I'm gonna take a hit as usual, and then continue. So this movie starts off with Blade chasing what he thinks is a vampire. No, also they find vampires find the body of Dracula, which Dracula is easily the worst thing in this movie. Oh my God, Dominic Purcell, who was I think at this time or the very next year he started that he was in that show Prison Break. I don't think he was necessarily a horrible choice, but I'll get to it. But but Blade, he was chasing what he thought was a vampire. It turns out because they were trying to distract Blade, so it turns out it was a familiar dressed as a vampire, and Blade killed him. And that's when like not the military, like the police are like, oh come, we gotta go after this guy. It was so stupid. Like when the first movie literally showed you how Blade could tell a difference between a vampire and a human. It's like, what the fuck? All right, so Blade just. It was clearly written that way. This is when, like, bad writing comes in. Like, we were literally told Blade could see the difference between a human and a vampire. And he, like, I think by smell, if I remember. And then, okay, he just. Okay, it's such a bad movie. So, okay, so Blade is made to look bad. He goes back to Whistler's place. He goes back to his hideout, but then it gets invaded by the police, and Whistler dies. Which I'm not against Whistler dying. I actually think in the third one, especially, it makes sense to kill him off. Not the way they did it. He should not have died so fucking early in the film. Like it was like the first 20, either 20 or 30 minutes. Like it's like really. And then you're gonna have him just get killed in a shootout? Like, come on, bro. If anything, Dracula should have killed him, and then you could have had a personal vendetta for Blade. Like, that's what should have happened. It should have been Dracula figures out the key to Blade is Whistler, so he kills Whistler. Then that's what does it. It's so stupid. Why did the way they did it? He just gets shot in a fucking shootout. It's pretty weak. So Blade gets arrested, and then this is where we're introduced to our bad guy, Parker Posey, who was Danica, who was trying to bring Dracula back. She was probably one of the better characters in the film. I don't really. The vampires in the first two movies were like portrayed as really badass, and then in this one they're just weak. They're whack, in my opinion. I think this film really just the vampires are just goons now. They're generic goons basically in this movie. There's nothing special about the vampires in this movie compared to like the first two where like the vampires were like a big deal. Yeah, they're 30 Days a Night vampires to me are the pinnacle, but man, the vampires in those first two films, like there was lore, they were badass, and in this they're just fucking generic. They're goons. They're just generic goons. That Blade, Hannibal, which is Ryan Reynolds' character, and then Abigail, who was Jessica Biel's character. They're just fodder. It's really bad. Like they're basically stormtroopers from the Mandalorian. It's really bad. And then Triple H, who y'all know I'm a Triple H guy. He's one of my favorite wrestlers. I actually think Triple H works as a vampire, but he's such a generic dumbass. In this, he's just a dumbass vampire. Like, oh, I'm dumb. That's all he was in this movie. It's really sad. I think you should have done more with Triple H, but so Hannibal King and Abigail Whistler, who's Whistler's daughter, rescues Blade, and then they go to his their hideout, and this is where they're introduced to other characters. And man, I like Jessica Biel. You know, she was in the '03 Badass, probably my only Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie I like, the '03 film. Besides okay, I like the original, but yeah, it's like in this though, yeah, if you're gonna have her be Whistler's daughter, there should have been scenes with her and Whistler. There weren't though, so Whistler was already dead. So, and I also don't really feel like she mourned her dad enough in this. Oh, he's dead. Okay, I'm introduced to this character, and basically Hannibal was Deadpool, and you know I like Ryan Reynolds, but he was annoying in this movie. All he was there for was just cringy humor. So basically, Blade is forced to work with those people, and this is where Dracula is brought back by Danica. I don't like how, and I guess in this film they call him Drake. Oh my god, I don't like how they do Dracula. I actually like the idea of Blade facing Dracula because it's like he's the pinnacle of vampires, right? But in this, he's just a generic bad guy. He doesn't feel special. Like I said, he should have been the one who killed Whistler. And then you would have had a personal storyline going in it. But they were too focused on pushing this show that I don't know if anybody wanted. Blade was the main character. And a lot of the scenes, there's one infamous scene where Blade is like on a table. And apparently it was Wesley Snipes, but he didn't open his eyes. His eyes were shut. So they had to like CGI eyes on it. It's really bad. Like this movie is oh my god. It's bad, but god. I'll admit the action's decent. I think that's like the only positive, really. But I think they try to make it like PG-13 too. It just didn't work. Cause remember this is the same year. Sorry if you hear that gate. Sorry. This is the same year as Spider-Man 2, and just like, come on. This movie was pretty bad. So, Drake is back. There's a scene between him and Blade, which, in my opinion, was it almost felt like a ripoff of the scene between him and Frost from the first movie, because Frost had a kid, and in this one, Dracula had a baby. It was stupid. So, I'll admit, the cool scene is where Dracula is walking around and he sees like a store that like is like fake vampire, and Dracula just kills him. I'll admit that's cool, but it should have been Dracula. It should have had gravitas, like Dracula in like the original Bram Stoker's Dracula from '92. Like it should have been something like that. Dracula in this was just boring. He was just big bad, and he's not even the big bad though. He doesn't feel like it. He's just because I actually, like I said, I like the idea of Blade facing Dracula. I do, but it was not executed well. And man, So he explains his plan to Blade. And if you're wondering why I'm not going, this movie is trash. I'm not putting the effort into this review like I normally do because this movie is trash. But Drake explains his plan. I don't care. So he's harvesting humans at like these farms. I don't know what they were going for. It felt like I don't know. So Blade and I think it was him and Abigail end up saving the people at the some people at this farm, and then and then Dracula goes to the Night Stalker's hideout and ends up killing pretty much everybody besides the one girl's daughter who was blind. She was either blind or just she was disabled in some way. Then Hannibal gets captured by is tortured by the vampires, and then Blade and Abigail have to save the cat. This movie doesn't make any sense. Abigail doesn't feel like a Whistler. They don't even really. There's not like. She doesn't feel like Whistler's daughter. She just feels like some random character. She should have just been some random character, honestly. It felt like force. Oh, we gotta make her like a Whistler, but they don't really go into it. If you're gonna have her be a Whistler, go into that fucking story. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. Like, they don't do anything with her. And I like Jessica Biel as an actress. You know, she was great in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie a year before, and then in this, she's just meh. So her and Blade save the captives. They're the cringiest scene in this probably entire movie is when Abigail is listening to music while she's fighting vampires. And this is my biggest issue. Why is she just fucking kicking vampires around? And it's not because she's a she. I would have been just as much of an issue if this was a dude. Vampires are not human. They shouldn't. You cannot. I don't like the idea of just humans beating the shit out of a vampire without weaponry. Also, it's stupid. Why is she just listening to music, like blasting music in the middle of a fight? That just doesn't. That's not smart. That doesn't make sense. You need to know where your surroundings are. Why are you listening to? I'm all for listening to music, but at that moment, that was just. I don't know if it just was. It was because it was modern times. You know, iPods were starting to become a thing. MP3s. So they were like, let's make like a scene where she's just listening to her MP3, but it's like in the middle of a fight against vampires, and like I mentioned, the vampires are just goons. They just get beat up, and yeah, if it was Blade beating him up because he's part vampire, but when you're just having humans throttle him around now, it's just I'm out of it. So while Abigail is fighting the side vampires, Blade confronts Dracula. And we have a pretty shitty fight, in my opinion, with a sword. So it just then Abigail comes in and helps Blade, and then Blade ends up killing the rest of the vampires, including himself, I guess, seemingly. And then Blade is not. It turns out he's not dead, and then pretty much the movie ends. There's an alternate ending where they tease like it was either the Night Stalkers confronting a vampire. They were supposed to start some Night Stalker show, which never happened. This movie is terrible. I really feel bad for Wesley in this movie because, man, that original idea. One, Guillermo del Toro is what made those first two films. You cannot do it without him, especially the third one in. You know, it just doesn't work when you replace a director who's done two films in. It just doesn't work. And then they try to lighten it up, making it PG-13. There was no blood. What made those first two Blade movies was the violence. You cannot make Blade PG-13, and then Blade was barely in it. I didn't really care for any of the Night Stalker characters besides Ryan Reynolds. And that's just because I like Ryan Reynolds. It's not necessarily I like him as a character in this movie. Because in this movie, he's pretty much Deadpool. And then you have Abigail, who there's nothing. She didn't have anything really to work with because her dad wasn't there. So there wasn't like there was I think one scene where they mentioned where she acknowledges her dad, but it's like one fucking scene. And then Blade is just there. You can clearly tell if the scene Wesley is in, you can tell he's phoning it in. Like he just does not give a shit. This movie all around, this is such a disaster. Especially because this is like it for the Wesley Snipe ones. Because now we're gonna get this shitty Disney one that's not even gonna be R-rated. I'm not watching it. Wesley Snipes is Blade, and the biggest thing, Blade's an R-rated character. I'm not watching PG-13 Blade. This is why PG-13 Blade doesn't work. And then Dracula was such a weak villain. He didn't matter. Like, literally, he did not matter. He just felt like he was just there. The vampires were all just there. Everybody was just there. You have Triple H, who is an actual athlete. You could have used him to actually, if anything, he probably should have been Dracula, honestly. Because I think him and Blade would have had a dope fight scene, and we didn't get it. That's the one thing, too. The choreography is just so shit compared to those first two films, which were just, oh my god, the choreography. In this, it's just so shit. Everything in this film is shit. I can understand why Wesley Snipes was not happy, you know? And like I said, I like David Goyer. He wrote Man of Steel. I love that fucking, y'all know I love that movie. But not every writer is meant to be a fucking director. That's the truth. They should have just went with that post-apocalyptic story. Especially in the era now, like, you know, you have the nightmare scene from DC. You have MCU Thanos snapping out of existence. X-Men, even Apocalypse a little bit has that, like, post-apocalyptic feel. It's like, come on. They should have just went that direction. But out of 10, this film's like a 5. Like, I think the only positive is the action. There's decent action. Like I said, the choreography is pretty shit, but the action itself isn't horrible at times. But yeah, that's about it. Like, this movie's awful. Don't watch it. Just watch the first two. End of story. So, and this is such a sad way to end the Blade trilogy. You know, you have like obviously that classic first one, but then the badass second one, and then this is how they end it. And then unfortunately, Marvel gets the rights back. So I'm gonna be honest. I think the MCU is gonna do a worse Blade movie than Trinity. One, because it's PG-13. PG-13 Blade doesn't work. This movie should have been the sign, but whatever. Tomorrow I am gonna do a WWE. I'm gonna do a fixing WWE video because I want to do a little bit more wrestling related videos. Tomorrow I will also do bands I love. I'll for sure do it tomorrow. I was gonna do it today, but then I had to do something with my friend earlier, so that's why I didn't do it today. But tomorrow for sure, bands I love on Smashing Pumpkins and fixing WWE video. But yeah, this movie is pretty trash. So. But other than that, you know, as usual, fuck Warner Brothers, fuck Disney, fuck LeBron James, fuck Kevin Smith, fuck Simon Liu. But yeah, this movie's pretty bad, so don't watch it, honestly. But yeah, guys, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. I got 2 videos planned. But yeah, peace.